Welcome to the Demon Hunter cards in Showdown in the Badlands. Now, as a note, I am no Demon Hunter expert, and it's one of my least played classes. And when I look at it, I gotta say that I don't see a lot of potential, but possibly someone more versed in Demon Hunter would see the value, which I do not see here. I do know, on looking up some stats, that Demon Hunter is one of the weakest classes coming into this expansion. So it's going to take a bit for them to be good. And I did notice two cards that I thought were quite good to start off with. We have Bartendo Bot, 2 mana 3/1 mech with Battlecry, draw an Outcast card and slide it to the left side of your hand. Demon Hunter has consistently been the class that pushes how good card draw can be. And Bartendo Bot pushes it because that's 2 mana for, a 3/1, which is reasonable stats. But when you're attaching the draw a good card and place it in the right position in your hand criteria to it, well, that looks quite good. Yeah, aggressive, fits the mid-rangey Outcast deck right now. The Demon Hunter Outcast card can just get deck can just get rid of their worst card and put in Bartendo Bot, and potentially they can put in Midnight Wolf as well. 6 mana 6/6 Beast with Rush and Outcast summon a copy of this. It's a little bit unusual as an Outcast card because it is a large Outcast card. And a large Outcast card has a bit of a problem because if you're not at 6 mana and this card is on the left side of your hand, then you can't play your other Outcast cards, which are like maybe the second to the left card or the third to the left card because the Midnight Wolf's on the way. But that is a big payoff. It's 6 mana for 12/12 with Rush as long as it's in the right place of your hand, left or right. So pretty big payoff for a simple task such as just placing it on the left or the right. Now, this is where my unfamiliarity with the class kicks in. I am actually not entirely sure if a 6 mana 2/6/6s with Rush would be enough to make Demon Hunter good. Like, I can easily see where this card going to a few other classes would be like, yeah, right on. This fits a mid-range deck, and if you didn't have that many Outcast cards, that many cards that cared about like being the ones to be on the left or the right, then yeah, I could definitely see. Sure, you have this as a mechanic. Maybe you play a bunch of cards that are lower cost than 6. The Midnight Wolf gets eventually stuck on the left, and that's good. But for an Outcast Demon Hunter, like maybe this sticks up your hand, and that's not great for it. So cool payoff. I think fits a mid-range style of deck, which I'm pretty sure doesn't currently exist in Demon Hunter outside of the Outcast deck, which I'm not entirely sure this fits, but you should certainly try it out. The other theme of Demon Hunter here is what I'll call the Blind Eye Sharpshooter package. It's basically revolving entirely around this one card. Kind of like how for Mage there was Spite Lash Siren, and there's Spite Lash Siren vibes here, because Blind Eye Sharpshooter is a 3 mana 1/5 Naga with after you play a Naga, deal 2 damage to a random enemy and draw a spell. Then switch. The switch is after you play a spell, deal 2 damage to a random enemy and draw a Naga. So it's a self-fulfilling machine, kind of like Spite Lash Siren. But where Spite Lash's Siren limit was the cards in your hand, Blind Eye Sharpshooter's limit is the amount of mana that you can spend. And I believe that the amount of mana is actually more limiting than the amount of cards, especially with the card generation of Demon Hunter. So I don't really see this working out as well as Spite Lash Siren for Mage worked out, because Spite Lash Siren for Mage, you could easily get a bunch of spells and get a bunch of Naga, get them together, have a big turn. But for Blind Eye Sharpshooter, you're not going to have the mana discount. So for this to work, you either have to have other cards that discount mana, and then have this instead be like a Gadgetzan Auctioneer situation, which hasn't worked because the limitation is once again mana. But hey, if you could get it to work, then that Sharpshooter could really go off. Oasis Outlaws is a card that directly goes into that deck. 1 mana discover a Naga. If you've played a Naga while holding this, reduce its cost by 1. So essentially it's a 1 mana tax, or a 0 mana tax rather, in order to get a Naga and then play it. So it is pretty much specifically meant to be both a Naga and a spell for your Blind Eye Sharpshooter. You have Load the Chamber as a combo piece to Blind Eye Sharpshooter. 3 mana Fel spell. Deal 2 damage. Your next Naga, Fel spell, and weapon cost 1 less. So specifically if you're playing a Naga, Fel spell, and weapon deck, you could get a total of 3 discounts, and then you effectively have 0 mana, deal 2 damage. This is a really low payoff card, which indicates to me that the main reason for this card is not to deal the 2 damage, and it's not to have like a 0 mana deal 2 damage. It's meant to be a setup card for your Blind Eye Sharpshooter, and I think that's just too much. It costs a bit too much. The card is not independently good enough to warrant running. You have a 2 mana 3/2 Naga called Parched Desperado. Battlecry, if you've cast a spell while holding this, give your hero +3 attack this turn. This is just one of those cards that's just good. It's a 2 mana 3/2 with a entire 1 mana spell tacked onto it. Give your hero +3 attack this turn. So seems good in a mid-rangey deck or an aggressive deck. And certainly you would put this into a Naga deck if a Naga deck were to show up and work. But even if it doesn't, card's still good in an aggressive deck. The main problem is Demon Hunter does not currently have an aggressive deck. You got Snake Eyes as one final Naga here. Very cool legendary. 3 mana 2/3. Battlecry, roll 2 dice, then discover 2 cards of those costs. Doubles, get an extra discover. So if you roll 2 4s, then you get 1 more card, which is pretty sweet. You know that I love Murloc Holmes, but over the years I have slowly realized that getting bad cards, and Murloc Holmes, you're getting cards from your opponent, so they're not bad cards, but they just don't synergize with your deck. And over time, internal synergy has mattered more and more, and generating cards, even if you discover them, has never quite been as good as it has used to be, which is why they keep ramping up just how much stuff you get. Finally, we've got a 3 mana 2/3 and getting 2 cards with it. This is card generation inflation, and yet at the same time, I'm not entirely sure that this will be good outside of the Naga deck, which may or may not even be good. So, like, yeah, I love this card. It's value. It's got my name on it, but I fully have to admit that value just has never quite been what it has used to be. You've got 2 cards here at the end here, other than the final. Make sure to stay around for the final. We got the Highlander payoff card. But 2 cards here that just aren't really that good. You got Pocket Sand, 2 mana, deal 3 damage, quick draw. Your opponent's next card costs 1 more. So we're used to 2 mana, deal 3 damage. You should have a slight benefit added onto that. The slight benefit here is if you play it the turn that you get it, your opponent's next card costs 1 more. That's too specific to be good. You're not always going to want to play 2 mana, deal 3 damage. So the quick draw requirement really kills this card, I'd say. You've got Fan the Hammer, 4 mana, deal 6 damage, split them all on the lowest health enemies. And yeah, dealing damage to the lowest health enemy is a good target. And the problem is just that it's not efficient enough of removal for this to be good, because it's rare for there currently to be a card purely dedicated to removal of minions. That's pretty much where we stand. Like, this card would have to be far more efficient, I'd say, for it to be played. Currently, it just doesn't do enough to excite for you to put into any deck, and that's a killer for this card. And finally, we've got the Highlander card for Demon Hunter, Gunslinger Kurtrus. 5 mana 4/6, Battlecry. If your deck has no duplicates, fire 6 random 2 damage shots at minions in the enemy's hand. Great card, powerful. However, I don't think it's a powerful enough card to justify building a Highlander Demon Hunter deck. Demon Hunter, currently the class that basically has the fewest amount of good cards, so as a Highlander deck, they have one of the fewest possibilities, and while this is a strong effect, it's like Mutinous. It has a potentially even higher upside than Mutinous, because if your opponent needs to play small minions to pull off their combo, like as an example, way back in the day of Sorcerer's Apprentice, Kurtrus one-shots the Sorcerer's Apprentice and ruins your opponent. Well, if that kind of situation are around, with Demon Hunters having like a broad enough base of good cards, then I could see Gunslinger Kurtrus being good. But as it stands now, this is not good enough to push Highlander Demon Hunter. So Therefore, easy call that won't be good enough. So there you have it for Demon Hunter. It's got some Outcast possibilities, and it's got an interesting Naga angle. However, unfortunately for Demon Hunter, we've got the Sunken City expansion rotating out next year. So, is this currently it for Demon Hunter? The set, it's going to be played alongside the set that's primarily based off of Naga. This is it. But I guess it's an indication that in the future, probably, there will be Naga printed, or perhaps in the next base set. So, hey, don't sleep on the Naga. If they're not good this set, they could be good eventually for Demon Hunter. Cool stuff. Next up, we'll see the Rogue cards, which kind of fit this set's theme of having good cards, and they even try to print a small package for the set for the class. But is that package good enough to justify running it over the current existing stuff? And commonly, I'm finding the theme is the answer feels like it's no here. Alongside, my very, very first thought about, well, is Excavate going to be a good thing when value has shown itself not to be good? And is Highlander going to be good enough as a theme when, currently decks with a lot of internal synergy are king? We'll see. But there you have it for Demon Hunter. Next up, Rogue.